Welcome to Break Through the Ordinary podcast. Are you ready and committed to your future self? If you are, sibling duo Mark and Claudine Chamante will take you on a journey of self-discovery to unlock your highest potential. Through impactful conversations with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, coaches, and healers, we are here to share practical tools and tips to generate the life you envisioned. New episodes drop every Monday.
And we're welcoming Mary-Theresa Tringale, who is an accountability and high-performance coach and has created the Aligned Empowered Project. And we're really happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for sharing your space with me.
Our pleasure. I'd like if you could just start to share, how did what's your journey to becoming a high-performance accountability coach? What's that for you?
Yeah. So I actually found it very organically. My journey of coaching actually started as an events coach. My entire career, and actually what I do full time right now, is as a sponsorships and events and sponsorships manager for a nonprofit here in Maine. But my whole career before that was events and marketing and sponsorships. So I always thought that was the only thing that I was allowed to do. But my own personal transformation, I went through my own experience. My father was diagnosed with a brain infection back in January of 2019. And I was trying to be this events coach, and everything that I possibly could do, I put in the work to build the business as an events coach, meaning that I would help other coaches build events that would become part of their revenue stream, part of their business, retreats, big conferences, whatever that may be. And I just thought that was all I could do. But when I went through my own personal transformation that took a lot of mindset work, a lot of learning about boundaries, learning about how to bring clarity into my life, I shared every piece of that journey. When my dad was diagnosed with the brain infection, it seemed like when it rained, it poured, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. And he was sent home from the hospital with hours to days to live. And we started making all these plans, but days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. And when that happens, if any listener out there, this has happened to them, it's the ultimate experience in feeling totally and completely out of control. And like I said, when it rains, it pours. My event business wasn't working, but not only was it not working, I was having clients that signed contracts who were trying to break their contracts with no consequence. I was having clients who said yes, and when I would send them the contract to sign and to pay, they wouldn't do it. They changed their mind. And it was just like everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I just felt totally lost. I felt I was not in good shape. I just didn't know who I was anymore. And I had this other thing happening where my dad was he was hanging out and nothing was happening. And we were waiting every day. He was like a ticking time bomb that any second that brain infection could take over his body. And my family and I were just like, we can't do anything. We can't make plans. We can't call a friend and say, hey, let's hang out, because every day is today the day. And when that feeling just totally and completely out of control, I was at the darkest place of my life. But what I did was I ended up going to a conference that introduced me to this challenge called 75 Hard. And the 75 Hard challenge helped me kind of take control of the things that I could control. So that's when I started walking every single day and working out again. And that's when I started caring about water. That's when I started following a diet and reading a lot. And the reading opened my eyes to so many new ways of thinking and being. But I learned about boundaries. I learned that when things are out of control and you just control the things you can control, the rest of the world can open up for you. And I shared every piece of that journey on social media with my community. And I didn't have a huge community. I probably had maybe 500 followers on Instagram, but I shared every single bit of it, the highs, the lows, the confusion, the tough days, everything. And what ended up happening was without even realizing it, I was becoming a leader. I was showing people how they too could take control of their own life. I was kind of giving permission to people to be unapologetic about their struggles and their journeys. And before I knew it, I had a lot of people reaching out to me and asking me for advice and how can they kind of take control of their own lives and what things can they start implementing into their life and how can they start creating good habits in their life. And suddenly I heard a whisper that the reason my business wasn't working was because I was selling the wrong thing. And when I heard that, I said, I think I need to listen. That was a really loud scream from the universe telling me that I need to make a pivot. And it had always been something that I had considered, but I never really thought it was for me. I still don't align completely with the idea of being a life coach. But what I had discovered, and when I made this pivot and I stepped into the space of self-development, kind of, it quickly became that people wanted me to hold them accountable. So I became an accountability coach, and people started saying, thanks for helping me stay accountable. It's like, oh, that's what I'm doing. And I created this program called the Aligned and Empowered Project based off of my own personal transformation, because I was doing these daily habits, and then I was learning all these lessons from the books. And then I had this community of support with another business coaching program that I was a part of. And it was basically like, these are all the pieces that helped me get through the toughest days of my life. So I'm going to pull them together into this program and see who shows up, who wants to have that kind of support. And who showed up were these people that I had, without realizing it, been coaching for years. And wherever I met them in my life, like 3 of the people I had come from my days of bartending at Buffalo Wild Wings. One was a client that used to sit at the bar that I used to coach. And 2 of the girls were 2 people who I worked with. And I used to say, hey, what are you doing with your life? Hey, what are you doing? Make sure you do this and do this. And I didn't even realize that I was coaching them. And then they were like, no, that's exactly what you were doing all along. So it's kind of, when I say that, how did I get into it? It was a very organic experience that I just kind of showed up for what the universe was already giving me in the first place. I just opened up the door for me to be able to step into this leadership role as a coach. And it's kind of evolved from there, because I don't just help the women in the Aligned and Empowered Project, but I also talk about money mindset. And I also have started helping entrepreneurs kind of break down the big projects into small actionable steps that they can make to start moving the needle. So as I keep evolving as a coach, it's kind of organically just turning into different ways that I can help different types of people in different areas of their life.
Thank you. So it's like you answered your calling. Wow, I didn't know that. That's an amazing journey.
So what principles guide your coaching, and which ones do you bring forth in your Aligned and Empowered project?
Well, I would say that going back to the idea of not allowing the things you can't control in your life to be the kind of the navigation system. And so I encourage my women to really lean into this idea of controlling the things that you can control. But it all begins with us understanding who we want to be at the beginning of the day. Because if you try and start implementing all of these habits just because you feel out of control in your life, you're never going to have any kind of why or connection to those habits. And that's actually, if you read Atomic Habits, James Clear is the author of that book. He talks a lot about how if you're connected to a goal or these habits without any actual connection within, then you're never going to stick to those habits. So you really have to make that connection within of who you want to be. So it all starts with who you want to be, and then you start controlling the things you can control. So it's small daily habits that align with who you want to be. And then once you do that, it's not like big, huge, grandiose things that you have to do in your life, but it could be as simple as walking every day for 30 minutes, which is one of the things that I mostly make the ladies in my program do, or any of my clients, my one-on-one clients, any of them. Because a huge part of being able to see triggers, being able to see things that are going to kind of knock you off your game, especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you don't have some sort of ritual or daily habit that will kind of keep you grounded and start off your day in a certain way, then you're not actually giving yourself an opportunity to see where the blocks are, see where the confusion is, see where you're being triggered. You'll be so full of crap in your head that you won't have any kind of clarity to see the things that are the actual problems. And that's where we start reacting instead of responding. So some sort of daily habit ritual that will help you connect to who you want to be allows you the opportunity to control the things you can control, so that you can allow for the doors to open in all other areas of your life, which if you're not grounded in those daily habits, then you're not going to hear that whisper I talked about earlier. When I heard that whisper, I was in such a grounded space to be able to hear the whisper, to hear that inner wisdom, so that I could understand where I was blocking myself, where I was holding myself back, where I was playing too small. So, and it's not just an entrepreneur conversation. This is for every person who wants to get some clarity in their life and get out of their own way and stop self-sabotaging and quit these cycles that actually most of the time don't even belong to them. It's generational. So I would say that that's probably where my foundation of my philosophy is. But we do a whole lot of work on mindset too, the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. The fixed mindset is also your limiting beliefs, your ego work, and understanding that you are not your emotions. You are not these thoughts. You are experiencing all of those things. And when we can disconnect ourselves from the emotions and the limiting beliefs and that ego that's kind of trying to keep you safe, you can stop making yourself feel bad because you make the bad decisions, or you can understand these cycles didn't come from you. They came from generations before you. It's a practice though. It's so not the easiest thing in the world to be able to disconnect yourself from all of these things that your whole entire life you thought defined you. But it's not, they don't define you. They're just, you are experiencing all of these feelings, the highs, lows, and everything in between. And then another philosophy that I really like to speak into is the idea of boundaries, because boundaries are your way of protecting your energy. And if you can learn how to create loving boundaries with people, then it just frees your energy up to not take on other people's worries or points of view as your own. And you can live in your space of your truth and allow other people to live in their space of their truth. And their truth doesn't have to affect you and what you believe in your own world. So boundaries, I love when Brene Brown says, kind is clear and clear is kind. That's a philosophy I've been living by for a very long time, that not everybody understands that being a good thing. But I believe that if you can manage expectations and be super clear about what people can expect of you, then that's the kindest thing that you can do for somebody and for yourself. But boundaries are hard with other people and for yourself too. So it's a practice. If you haven't grown up with people who have, if your parental units didn't have boundaries, then it's very hard for you to learn boundaries. But also if your parental units had boundaries in one area, but didn't have them in another, then it's likely that you grew up that way too. Another place that it's hard to put up boundaries is at work, in the workplace. And if you started your career with management who had no boundaries, then that's likely how you'll continue in your career. So it's hard to learn boundaries when you're 10, 15 years into your career, but it's not impossible. So that's another philosophy that I live by.
I like boundaries.
Can we get back to the founding principle, right, that you spoke about, is what you can control and what you can't control? I agree with you. I often do that activity too. And I was just kind of wondering if you have a way to bring that forth for people, because I don't know that that's an awareness that people like, oh, I'm in control of that. And you're like, some things we're not in control of. So I was just curious, is how do you bring that awareness forth for your clients, either in the group or individually?
Yeah. So I think what the best example of how I even came to that was when I was dealing with my father, right? So he, just as an example, he was living with this brain infection that was someday just going to take over his body. And we as a family unit couldn't make plans for 2 weeks ahead. Couldn't make plans for 2 days ahead, never mind 2 weeks ahead. We didn't know if it like something was going to happen overnight or within the next couple of hours. It was the ultimate experience. There was nothing I could control about that situation. Other things I couldn't control. I couldn't control how my client was going to act when I told them that they couldn't just stop paying me, right? I couldn't control that when somebody said yes to me and I sent them a contract to sign, that they didn't sign it and that they decided to move forward without it. I couldn't control all of those things. I also couldn't control what was happening at my full-time job, which was that there was just a lot of things going on there that just were completely out of my control. But the things I could control was, did I give myself time for myself each day? Did I take time for myself each day? Was I making sure that I was hydrated so that I could think clearly when I wasn't starving or I wasn't so thirsty I couldn't even see clearly or think clearly? Was I taking time to fill my soul with a book that helped me kind of expand my point of view, whatever was happening in the world? Was I, if somebody was asking me to hang out and I told them that I couldn't make plans and they got upset with me, that was out of my control. But what was in my control was the conversation that I had with them about why I couldn't go out, right? So there was boundaries that I could create with friends around their expectations of me for the next cut. So those are the things that I have control over. So some clients I might have, they have partners that aren't aligned with when they're trying to do their habits every day. They might have a partner in the household who doesn't understand what they're doing. That's not something they can control, but what they can control is how they communicate with that partner and what they ask of them and how do they say to them, this is something that I need, and the way in which they create that boundary. And if it's a loving boundary with this is what I need, I know that you care about making it, helping me be the best version of myself. This is what that is. Or you can control and be like, well, tough snookers, this is what's going to happen for me right now. Right? So that's something they can control. Does this make sense?
It does, but you also have a heightened awareness. Like you can hear, this is my interpretation, that you've done some of this self-evaluation, right? And I'm hearing that that's probably how you guide some of your clients too, to really look at what's working, what's not working, right? What's in your control, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a tool, if you're asking for a tool that they can use, one of the most powerful tools besides coaching is journaling. Right. And so a lot of times when I'm working with clients, it's when you struggle with journaling, which is one of the habits that I highly encourage a lot of my, depending on what their I am statement is, whatever their declaration of identity is, as we call it. Journaling is often one of the habits that I encourage them to do. And a lot of people have issue with journaling for two reasons. First, they don't know what to write about. Yes. Right? Yes. They get so hung up on journaling that they don't know what to write about, and then they get stuck, right? And then the second one is that they get very judgmental of their journaling. Is it good enough? Do they write incomplete sentences? And what the conversation that I have with my clients a lot is, this isn't a Dear Diary situation. That's not what journaling is. It's not about today, this is what I did, da-da-da, and then I moved over here, and then I did my homework, da-da-da. That's like the classic way that we, as females at least, we grow up thinking that's what the journaling and the diary, having a diary is all about. But I actually see journaling can be one of two things: that you answer really deep questions that you normally would run away from. And two is to allow yourself to have a stream of consciousness on the page. So I'll start with number two, which is one of my favorite ways of journaling, which is that I do some deep breathing. Gabby Bernstein actually taught me this method, and you do some deep breathing and you kind of meditate for 5 minutes or so, just allowing yourself to connect with your inner wisdom. And then you just ask the question, what do I need to know today? And you just put your pen to paper and you just write. And sometimes what comes out is just, you are okay. Everything is fine. You are safe. Everything's going to be okay. You're doing a great job, or whatever. And that's like a really good positive day, right? That I'm feeling really good about myself. Other times it might be really a stream of consciousness of you being really, really hard on yourself. You're so dumb. You're so stupid. Why did you do this? Da, 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 da. But it's really, really important that you allow all of those thoughts, whatever they may be, good or bad, to come out, to not stay inside, to allow them to come out and breathe and have space. And this is where we get into the conversation about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. You're not supposed to push all of those negative feelings under the rug as if they don't exist. You're supposed to allow them to exist. And you say, okay, fixed mindset, I see you trying to keep me safe. I see you trying to stop me from taking this big leap because last time it didn't work. I see you. And then what we're supposed to do, well, Gabby Bernstein's method, it's the choose again method. It's acknowledging those thoughts, forgiving those thoughts for existing, and then coming up with a better feeling thought. If you can't even figure out what those thoughts are, what am I even feeling? Then you're not even going to be able to do that choose again method. So the first step is to allow yourself this stream of consciousness in journaling to just let it all come out of whatever's inside of you. And because sometimes you don't even know what's hidden way back there in the subconscious because you're living so much in the consciousness that it's hard for you to allow that stuff to come out. So the journaling really allows just the stuff that's inside of you to come out, because when you're being so judgmental about your journaling, you don't want anything bad to come out. You don't want anything that's not super profound. You don't want anything that doesn't make any sense. But when you do just allow yourself this stream of consciousness to just kind of let it flow and come out of you, it doesn't matter if there's a period. It doesn't matter if it's a complete sentence. It doesn't matter if the words make any sense whatsoever. But I guarantee if you take the time to do that and you do that for a week, and then the following week you go back and read what came out of you, you're going to find a whole lot of information in there that you didn't even realize was within you because you were holding it in. That's the first way to build some awareness, is to just allow yourself this stream of consciousness of like, what is happening? What is going on? What are the blocks that I have? And you can ask those questions too. What's blocking me from having the things that I want? And then you just allow it to flow. Just flow and flow and flow until you get it all out. And going back to the first one, which is that you come up with your own journal prompts. This is where having a coach or a therapist might be helpful, because I often, when I'm working with my clients, we'll be on a coaching session and I'll say it's not for them to even work through in that moment in time of our coaching session. It's actually something that needs their more attention from them. So we'll come up with the questions that they clearly haven't allowed themselves to answer. A big question can be, what role am I playing in keeping myself from having everything that I want? That's a big question that we often don't want to answer, because that means we have to take radical responsibility for where we're at. But even then, if you have a feeling of, I don't want to answer that question, okay, why don't I want to answer this question? That's another great question. Yeah. So it's about being curious. It's about allowing yourself to be curious, but those are the questions. And I say that we often run away from these big questions because that means that we have to take responsibility for where we're at. And I had a client who the biggest question she didn't want to let herself answer, and she was a nurse, was, do I want to be a nurse anymore? She knew the answer. And instead of allowing herself to answer the question, she kept running away from it and digging herself into this hole of misery at her job. And the bigger the question was that she had to answer, and that she still has yet to answer for herself, is, do I even want to be a nurse anymore? Because the answer is no. And that equals action. Because that means her issue with work has nothing to do with the circumstances of her job, right? Whether they're understaffed, or whether the stuff like her patients are being mean to her, or the coworkers are difficult to work with. None of that has anything to do with it. It has everything to do with the fact that you just don't even want to be doing what you're doing anymore.
Hence aligned, right? Like, I mean, it's all about alignment. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually when I was going through my own transformation, the walking every day for 45 minutes has been such a game changer for me. And I do it year round. I live in Maine and I do this year round. So I have gear for the winter. I have gear for the summer and everything in between. And, but I specifically remember walking and having in the middle, maybe it was like minute 36, I suddenly had this huge epiphany of like, I am more aligned with who I want to be in life today than I've ever been in my entire life. And that just means that like the decisions that I'm making, the jobs that I have, that everything I'm doing is in alignment with my path, with my purpose. And if I didn't allow myself that kind of space every day to even be thinking in that way, I never would have even come to that realization that I was in alignment. And sometimes the epiphany needs to be, I'm not in alignment at all. Everything that's on my plate doesn't feel good. And that's the other thing that, these rituals and habits will allow you to have, is the space to even have that one realization that can come anytime. But if you're just you're not allowing yourself that space, you're not allowing that time for the things you can control, you're not giving yourself that little bit of grounding and opportunity for you to have that foundation, then you're never going to allow yourself to have those moments of clarity. And alignment doesn't come without clarity, right? And neither does empowerment. The clarity is such a huge piece of this.
Oh, thank you. No, that makes a lot of sense. I would like to ask you about a distinction, for our listeners. I do know MT from another business coaching school. One of your distinctions is about powerless versus a to-do list. And I think it's such an important distinction. If you could share that with our listeners, and I think it could be an asset for them too.
Yeah. So I have this, and this was a big one for me when I realized this made such a difference. So we have to-do lists. And our to-do lists I've heard so many people, my to-do list is 3 pages long and it has 75 things on every page. And I actually learned this. Again, I've been in logistics and events, and, which events are just a million different little pieces and tasks that you have to do in an organized manner in order for the big picture, for the big thing to actually come to fruition, right? And when I started realizing and taking a look at people's to-do lists, I would look at it and it's like on their to-do list is paint the bedroom. And then they would be like, I'm never getting this thing done on my to-do list. It's like, because painting the bedroom is not a to-do. That's a project. So your to-do list is not, unless you have at the top of your to-do list, paint the bedroom, and then it's listed out all the things that go along with painting the bedroom, then that becomes a to-do list, if you will. But what we want to do is move that to-do list into a power list. So it's about identifying, your to-do list should not be full of a whole bunch of projects, right? So you have to identify, okay, I have 5 projects that I want to get done. Let's just start with painting the bedroom. Then you need to break out all of the brainstorm, get it out of your head, all the things that need to get done before the bedroom is painted. The long-term vision, the big vision is the bedroom is painted. But what you need to do before then is, what color are you going to paint it? Well, I have no idea. Okay, there's actually 3 to-dos that need to get done before you can even decide on what color. You need to go to the paint store. You need to maybe even before then, you need to do some inspiration research, right? Find your inspiration. Find some colors, some looks that you like. Then you go to the paint store and find some samples that you might like. Then you come home and you buy the samples. Then you come home and you actually put the samples on the wall. Then you allow yourself to decide what color the paint is. So that's like 5 to-dos before you've even bought the paint that you need for the bedroom, right? So too often we get overwhelmed, I'm using quotes, because our to-do lists are just full of a whole bunch of projects. And then we get really, really mad at ourselves that we haven't moved the needle on our to-do list. And the answer is because we don't even allow ourselves the opportunity to move the needle on the to-do list, because it's full of big projects instead of those small actionable things that you could do. So the process is to figure out your projects, to brainstorm all of the ideas, all of the tasks, the to-dos that are underneath the project. And it'll be a lot, right? So just all the to-dos. Once you buy the paint, then you need to decide what day is going to be a good day to paint the room. Do you need people to help you painting the room? Do you need people to help you move all the furniture? If you do, who's going to help you? Identify those people. Ask them. Those are all tasks that you put on your to-do list, right? And the way I like to teach it is to use stickies. So I use big stickies for the projects, and then I use different smaller stickies for every single task. And then you just put all the tasks on the wall, all of them. And as soon as you have them all on the wall, then you prioritize them. You actually stick them on the wall in order of how they need to get done. And then, so that helps you kind of prioritize. Like, I can't buy the paint until I do the research to see what colors even inspire me, right? So that's actually going to be number one. Number two is to go to the store. Number three is to buy those samples. Number four is to bring them home and actually put them on the wall. Number five is to decide which one you like, right? So then you put them in order, and depending on how much time you have, let's just say you're a normal person with limited time, then you would create what I call a power list every day. And it's 3 to 5 things from that project list, from all of those tasks, that will help you start to move the needle. So it's not that you have to get all of that stuff done in one day, which is how we get so caught up and we're like, our whole Saturday is gone because I spent the whole Saturday prepping for the painting, right? Which means that you probably did 35 to-dos on that one day. But in order to move yourself along in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming, is you do 3 to 5 things every day to move the needle a little bit. So maybe on for day one, it's a Monday, when on your lunch break, you actually do 15 minutes of research on Pinterest to try and find different inspirations. And then maybe the second to do is to print out those inspirations, right? And then maybe the third one is, I don't even know where there's a paint store. So then the third to do is actually to research the closest paint store. Then you've got 3 things done for your first day, and you start to move the needle just a little bit towards finishing that project. Then the next day, maybe you go to the paint store on your lunch break. You actually pick up 3 different samples plus whatever gear you might need. Maybe you need paintbrushes. Maybe you need whatever else. And then at night, when you get home, you actually paint that paint on the wall so that in the morning you can see what it would look like in the daylight, right? So now you've moved the needle even more, right? So every day you get to move the needle a little bit towards whatever that project is that you have in mind. So this is a big one for me. I love talking about this. I could talk about it, and it's not everybody's that nerdy about to-do lists and power lists, but I find that the power list, it's supposed to be full of things that take 10 to 15 minutes that we usually will put on the back burner because it's like, yeah, I'll get to that, because it's small little things that we're like, yeah, I'll do the research. Yeah, I'll get the samples. Yeah. But those are the things that are actually going to get you to the point that you can actually paint the bedroom, right? Because if you didn't do all those things, then it's always like, well, I have time today to paint the bedroom, but I don't have the paint. I don't know what color. I don't know what I want to do. I don't have anybody to help me, right? That's my to-do list to a power list.
You know, as part of that process with your clients or even yourself, when you create that, because I think there's a real release of energy when we start to see the dial, right? Because when we see it, it's still up there, right? There's a lot of story, judgment, or heavier energy because it's in completion energy. Do you do any acknowledgement, or have your clients do acknowledgement, like, woohoo, got 3 things done on the power list?
Well, my clients, in the Align and Empower Project and my one-on-one clients, every day they have to share a win with me. So I'm big into celebration. I think that celebrating ourselves is a huge, huge part of the process. I'm a big believer in bragging. I think that we should all be taking up space to celebrate the things that we're doing. And I believe that everybody deserves the right to do that. When it becomes harmful is when people start judging each other. I did this and you can't do that. And that makes me better that I did this. That's when it's harmful. But I think that a rising tide lifts all ships, and your wins are my wins. And if you do better in the world, then that means ultimately I do better too, because your high vibes affect my high vibes. So celebration to me is a huge, huge, huge part of it. I have 2 friends that I am accountability buddies with, that we share wins with each other via text every day. And then I have my clients are sharing their wins with me every day. And sometimes it is, you know what? I just moved the needle a little bit with my project today. Seems like 3 small things, but it never would have gotten done if I didn't take the time to do it today. So that's one thing. And then, even just on days that are really hard, that maybe they didn't get to their power list, even though they wanted to, sometimes the win is just the acknowledging and taking the time to be accountable that I didn't get it done today. And the fact that I'm even saying that out loud is a win, because just holding myself accountable and not sweeping that under the rug, that it was a challenging day and I didn't get to it. So sometimes the win is just that you made it through the day. Sometimes the win is that you woke up in the morning and that you're breathing and that you have clean water to drink. And that's okay too, as long as you're accountable to the momentum that you do make every day, which we do. Unless you just sit on the couch and do nothing every single day. But even sometimes that is considered momentum based on what you have going on in your life. So
I'm curious, you brought up painting, but money happens to be an issue for people. So I was wondering, how do you optimize or money manifestation for people or individuals?
that's a loaded question. It's a very big question. It's not a simple answer, but I like that. Money is I love talking about money, right? And it's a big part of, I have it's called the Money Magnet Accelerator. That's now going to be, the membership club. And we don't have enough time in the day to talk about it. But I will say that money is energy. Money is just the middleman. Money is just the opportunity. Money isn't good or bad. It just is. And the sooner that we can all recognize that it's a necessity and that you aren't a better person for thinking that you don't need it in life, that you just allow yourself to need it and love it and have a great relationship with it, the better off you'll be, we'll all be. I like to look at money as a relationship, like a human being relationship. And the day that I actually took a look at how I was treating money and considered that it was a human who I wanted to love me and to be in my life and to give me everything that I needed, I realized that I was in a toxic relationship with money and it was all my fault. I never was happy when it was around. I always sent it on its way to do a whole bunch of errands without ever thanking it. By errands, I mean pay this bill, buy me this, go do this, take me out to dinner, buy takeout here, da da da. And then all of a sudden it wasn't there anymore. And I was pissed at it because it wasn't there anymore. It never showed up fast enough. And whenever it did show up, it wasn't enough. Like if this was a human being, they'd be like, are you kidding me? I was just here. You didn't hang out with me when I was here. You sent me on all these errands that you don't even know where you were sending me. You don't even know where all this money, where you just sent me, which is true. I was unconsciously spending all of this money. I was just spending it and not having any clue where it was going. And then I would be mad that it was gone. If money was a human, it would be like, what? I was here. You sent me away. And I only have so much energy. I only can come back every 2 weeks. By the way, like the fact that I come back every 2 weeks is like lucky on you because you're a really bad negative energy and I actually prefer to not be here. Right? Like I was so ungrateful. And so, but once I saw how I was treating money and that I really wanted it to be a positive relationship, and that was a huge shift for me. And then also when I realized that money was energy. And so, back in the day, money didn't exist. It was, I'll give you my cow for 2 of your goats. Right. And that was the exchange. But eventually it became, well, I don't have any animals, but I need 2 of your goats. How about this gold? And then the gold became the exchange. And then all you needed to do was have this gold. You didn't need to have any other assets. You just had to have the gold. So now the money has become that exchange, and it holds much more power than over so many of us than it actually should. But all it is the thing in which you exchange. So when we sit here and we think, I don't have any money, and it's like, well, where did your money go? Oh, it went to that bag of $200 worth of athletic clothes that are sitting on my couch right now. Right? Oh, it's here. It's just in clothes. It's just not in cash anymore. It's not in my bank account, but it's here. It's right in front of me, but it's not as the traditional way of looking at money. Right. So the other day I had to get a tire changed. I did buy a new tire, which if anybody who's like, oh, you need a new tire when you go to get your car fixed, you're like, oh my God, how much is this going to cost me? And is it 1 tire or is it 4 tires? And luckily for me, it was just 1 tire. And I was lucky that I had the money. I had the money in a savings account. I was able to move it over. And I know that in the back, 5 years ago, before I started my money mindset journey, I would have been so stressed out that I had to take that money out of savings and use it for something that wasn't fun, like a tire on my car. And I couldn't save it. It wasn't now sitting in savings that I wanted for like a trip somewhere. But my money mindset now, the relationship that I have with money is every time I'm driving that car, I know that my money is actually spinning away around in that tire. It's actually right there. It's in the tire. It's the thing that gets me from point A to point B. It's the thing that keeps me safe on the road. So my money didn't go anywhere. It's actually right here with me. And when you can make that shift, that money isn't about the what's in your wallet or what's in your bank account, that you're actually surrounded by thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars at all times, then it's like that allows you to shift into that abundance space. I don't really know if that answered your question, but I could go on and on and on and on and on about money mindset.
That's good. Yeah, I like the perspective. And I think it's a great challenge, actually, for our listeners to actually look at what's the relationship with money. How are they seeing money?
I like how you put it. If we could add it, like, right, if it was a person, it's a very new awareness as I was listening to. Would I be in relationship with it in such a way that had my goals in mind, or is it a toxic relationship, right? Like, am I having what I say I want to have in this juicy relationship, a 10 relationship with money or a person? I would like if we could do something around that, and let's share that at, tag us on social media at the BTO podcast and Instagram or Facebook of where is your relationship with it? If it was your partner, your lover, or a best friend, how are you in relating? Yeah, communicating.
And I would say that on that note, I go back to saying money is just like food and just like water and just like human connection. It's something that we need. It's a necessity. So if this exercise will help if you see it as I have to have a relationship with money, period. Because if you come from a space of, I don't need money, I'm fine without it, and like that kind of perspective of, I'm better than that. I'm better than the 1% who's super greedy and they have all the money and they don't share it with the world. If you come from a place of, I'm too good for money, I don't need money, then this exercise isn't going to work for you because you think you won't need it. And so therefore you don't want to have a relationship with it. But I actually love comparing money to food because food is also a journey that I have too, and where food is a necessity. And sometimes I'm like, why does it have to be so bad for me? Why do I have to struggle with it so hard? Why do I have to have such a connection with coffee rolls that I can't stop eating them, right? And I hate coffee rolls, but I love coffee rolls. I hate vegetables, but I need vegetables, right? So it's kind of like, you know what? I just need to accept that good food, vegetables are good for me and they're going to help me live a really long life. So I need to start working on that relationship with vegetables so that I start actually enjoying that process. It's the same with money. You need money. You need money to survive. You just do. It is a resource. It is the thing that gets you a roof over your head. It gets you the food that you need to eat. It gets you the clothes that you need to wear. So the sooner that you can say, okay, I need to have a relationship with money. And so what do I want it to look like? Personally, I want money to be my best friend. I want my best friend. I want money to be my BFF. I want to be in love with money. I want money to love me. I want to always trust it. I want it to be in my corner. I want to have so much fun with it. I want it to be always there for me. I want to have all the cool experiences in the world. I want to keep investing in myself with money. I want money to be by my side through every step of the way. So how can I have that relationship with money every single day? And it's not, when I've been having a bad relationship with money for 30 plus years, this is a practice. It's something that you have to lean into every single day and work that muscle. It's just like discipline. It doesn't just come right away. It's going to be something. And with any kind of mindset journey, whether that's with money, food, relationships, whatever that may be, it's an onion. So as soon as you peel away that first layer and you're like, yes, I totally conquered this. I totally have the best money mindset. It's like, oh no, there's another layer right there. So now you need to work through this one too. And it's like, and that comes with, every layer of that onion is another up leveling of your life too. So it's all connected, and you just have to keep on keeping on with it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's definitely some inner work I get to be present to. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, I don't know what my money question was, but that was a great answer.
Okay.
Really
well, it sounded like, well, how do you get, well, you talked about manifestation, and I think that, manifestation is actually a whole other subject, and it's a whole other practice. So I like to start here with the foundations of money, which is that it is energy, that it is a cycle of giving and receiving, that you can't cut out, like you need to be open to receiving money in whatever way it comes, and also be willing to give it. It's an ongoing cycle. So if you just take all the money and put it in your savings account and never spend it, you're breaking up that cycle. So it's an ongoing cycle as well. There's a lot of foundations and then you get to manifestation. To me is like, there's this manifestation, and then there's understanding money as energy. They work together, and also manifestation is its own little beast of understanding those steps of manifesting. So, but that's a whole other, I like to teach the foundations of the money mindset, and then you can lean into the manifestation, I think.
Oh, thank you. Oh, really? I would like to transition right now into fast fire questions. And this is, whatever comes up for you.
Filling and no judgment.
Feeling and no judgment.
Filling, completely, like just filling, like filling of your, like a balloon, and just filling, so full, and then non-judgmental.
I appreciate that. Filling.
So what's your superpower?
Oh, I want to say something along the lines of kind is clear and clear is kind. I'm learning about boundaries. I'm evolving with boundaries, but what I've learned for a long time is that I've always felt that managing expectations and being clear about what those are was the kindest thing I could do for myself and for others. And so I think that some people might find it overwhelming how clear I am with expectations, and I think it's my superpower that I don't connect to which it could be bad or good, to the emotions that are connected to that kind is clear and clear is kind, rather than that I would rather be really clear with what my boundaries are and what your expectations are, because I think that for me, that's the best way for me to serve you, and for you to be clear on what's going to support me in return. And I've always been able to manage expectations, I think, in that way. So I do think that that's a zone of genius for me.
So what are your 2 favorite books?
Oh, gosh. Okay. I will say there's so many. One that I listen to on repeat in Audible, and I have it in the hardcover, is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. Every time I read it, something new comes up for me. I think it was really truly the foundation of me really leaning into who I am and allowing myself to be that person unapologetically, and just continue to allow that to be my truth and be authentic about it. And then the other book that I love is Secrets of a Millionaire Mind, which was a huge game changer for me when it came to money mindset. So, and I read that on the regular too. I highly recommend anybody who's struggling with money mindset that you should start there. There's a lot of really cool money mindset books. You Are a Badass at Making Money is also fantastic. That's another Jen Sincero book, but the Secrets of a Millionaire Mind was really, really impactful for me. I do want to also just say, the other day I was thinking about this, that Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg was a big book for me. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite books, but I just remember that it was probably the start of my leaning into this idea of leadership for women and what that looks like versus men. And because I was constantly told I was too much my whole life, too loud, spoke too much, talked too much, but definitely too bossy. And my whole entire life. And that bossiness also connects to that, what I thought was my zone of genius, which is the kind is clear and clear is kind. I think the bossiness is telling people that it is your expectation. So what your expectations are and that they should be doing it. So yeah. So anyway, that's what that book really helped me. And then, but my two favorite are You Are a Badass and The Secrets of a Millionaire Mind.
Just downloaded that yesterday, Secrets of Millionaire.
Oh, yeah. I'm interested to know what you think. It's really good.
I will let you know.
So who is the person who had the most influence on creating who you are now and why?
I guess I'll just say it's my dad, because it was because of his journey that I was able to stand into who I am and be unapologetic about it all. He was always encouraging me to be myself my whole life. So as much as my mother was telling me that I was too loud and too bossy and this, that, and the next thing, my dad was always the one who was really encouraging me to be me. But his journey was one I would consider full of courage and never giving up. And I think that through his grace of, doing his best to survive as long as he could, I was able to have my lowest point of my life, which also allowed me to reach my highest point of my life. So without that low of his experience, I wouldn't be here today.
So as we wrap up this amazing experience of sharing more time with you, is there any words of wisdom or anything you would like to impart to our listeners that you perhaps haven't shared, or anything you want to deepen?
I think that my biggest words of encouragement that I would share is to get support wherever you may need it. I would say that my dad is probably the biggest influence of me being where I am today, but I wouldn't be here also if it wasn't for the other leaders that I enrolled to be part of my journey. And that's when I talk about the Aligned and Empowered Project, again, I say I brought all of these pieces together that I had at that time in my life. And part of that was having coaching and having a community of people around me who were supporting me every step of the way. And that's what I created in that group. But, I've hired a lot of other coaches to kind of support all the different parts of my dream and my vision and my purpose. And I think that if I didn't allow, and by the way, they're all younger than me. And if I didn't allow these people to be a part of my life to help me kind of bring my vision to life, I definitely wouldn't be here. I think that there's no shame in asking for help and allowing yourself to be supported. I think that, but you have to choose that no shame, because I think it's so funny. I actually had a conversation this morning with somebody who thought that was a bunch of BS. Like, this is my whole life that I'm building here, but it doesn't matter what he thinks. I know my truth, and that is that I allowed people to support me. And so if it was with that, I would say that that's the one big piece of advice. So whatever that may be for you, whether that's therapy or a coach or a teacher, enrolling in a program with some sort of educational piece, whatever that may be, allow yourself to be supported, because we're not supposed to do this all by ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing our time with you today and your story. I appreciate to get to know you more, and I hope to continue the conversations. So with much appreciation, I want to thank everyone for listening to Break Through the Ordinary podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode and a deep dive into your own wisdom to live an extraordinary life. If you'd like to support the podcast, please leave a rating and share it with others on social media. To catch the latest, follow us at the BTO Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thanks again, and see you next time.